Hi, I'm Rick Dior. And that little solo was based mostly on triplets. So this is part 2 of my triplet video series. And in this part, I'm going to talk about putting triplets on the drum set. So if you remember in the first part, we just worked with the practice pad. We worked on stickings and interpreting 16th notes as triplets. But there you saw how I apply some of those things to the kit. I play some unisons between the cymbals and the toms and the bass drum. I do some cross-sticking. I play some melodic ideas. I do some polyrhythmic things where I play groups of 9. So in other words, groups of 3 within 3. So lots of different kinds of phrasings there. And we're going to teach you today how to start working on that. It takes a while to master this kind of thing. The first thing we need to work on are crossovers, because that's the physically demanding thing you're going to need to do with this. By crossovers, I mean crossing over yourself like this. So that kind of thing. Now, doing this traditional makes it a little bit easier for me rather than, because traditional I have a little bit of an angle. So I don't have as far to reach with my left hand. Now that decision's up to you to make. You can do them perfectly fine with matched. It's just a little easier to do them traditional. So the first exercise you want to do is start playing page 7 like we did in the first video, crossing over. I like to practice this with my snares off. It makes a little less vibration on the floor tom. So if you get your feet going like this, just very simply, you're going to want to feather that bass drum, okay? 2 and 4 with the hi-hat, and a good tempo to start, let's say 120. So you see there, I'm just playing singles on the snare drum, and I'm crossing over whenever that left hand has to play. And all the written notes are on the floor tom. That's very important to understand. So the next step would be to play these things around the drums. And you're improvising at all times here, so there's no set way to do this. But again, all the written notes are around the toms, and everything else is played on the snare drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the first 2 lines of page 7. Now when you play that faster, it gives sort of a soloing quality to it. Let's say 160 now. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and of course this can go really, really fast if you wanted to. 200, it's a good tempo. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. right, so that's an option, obviously, as well for soloing and fills. Now, if you look at page 8, this becomes a little more complicated because you have 2 notes at a time. So those crossovers become extremely difficult. I would suggest practicing this slowly once again. 120 is a good tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was page 8, lines 1 and 2, crossing over. Now the next logical progression of this is to play this around the drums as well. So we'll start this at 130, and we'll play some of these around the drums. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and once again, we'll play this quickly for you. Let's go to 200. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that was lines 1 through 3 and playing on the toms. Now this kind of thing has been used by lots and lots of drummers, obviously. A lot of the jazz drummers like Art Blakey, Kenny Clark especially, Max Roach used a lot of singles. And of course you go way back and you're thinking of Gene Krupa doing listen to a lot of them solo, they used mostly singles, and they were doing all kinds of fancy crossovers, anything to get the crowd buzzing. So those were solo sort of tactics that these players used. Like I said in the first video, guys like Philly Joe, he started bringing the double stroke rudimental stickings into this kind of thing. So things like that where he would mix doubles and singles. Anytime you would study his solos, you would see those kinds of stickings. And I was really lucky enough to see him before he passed a few times because I was always fascinated by his solos and stickings when I was a young kid. So when I saw him, that verified that he was using all these double stickings. And of course, this is kind of a rock/funk set of drums. On a set of jazz drums, it sounds completely different. And I will do another one of these series on the jazz drum kit as well. So after you learn these things, singles, you want to work on the double strokes. And to do that, like we talked about in the first video, what you need to do is do mixed stickings of right, right, left, 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 right, or left, right, 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 left, left. So a really good example of this thing, if you want, you can go on Spotify and look up the Wynton Kelly tune, Action. That has Philly Joe on it. And around, I don't know, 4.5 minutes in, there's a drum solo. And he uses that exact kind of sticking halfway through the solo. I think they trade fours a few times, and then he plays a chorus or so. So you can hear that solo just on the snare drum. It's blatantly rudimental right there, and it sounds great. So this is the kind of thing you want to learn if you want to learn how to, solo in jazz. Now, lots of rock drummers use this kind of thing too. Mitch Mitchell with Jimi Hendrix. Obviously, John Bonham used it a lot. Carmen Appice used it a lot if you heard him with Jeff Beck. Many, many different drummers. Ginger Baker, of course, is a great example of guys who used fast singles. And doubles like that. So they mixed it up. All right, and a lot of this was influenced by, of course, the great jazz drummers, who those guys did listen to, believe it or not. So the next step, like I said, is to take page 7 and do that with doubles around the drums. So let's show you what that looks like at about 150. So we'll play a little bit of page 7. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see there, sometimes here I'm playing some accents on the snare drum too. Now when you speed that up, it sounds pretty impressive. Once again, we'll do 200. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you want to really go Buddy Rich on it, you can speed this up all the way to 240. And for this, I would recommend turning off the triplets, or else your head will explode. So let's try this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, couldn't help myself. It's so much fun. So 240 and up, those are the Buddy Rich tempos, okay? Now, if you go on to page 8, we have a little bit of a difficult issue here because you can't play all doubles here. You've got to play some singles. So if you look at this slowly, you'll see that when you have the 2/16ths together, that you have to play a single there. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a great exercise to play these things slowly. It takes so much control to do that. So you see there a mix of single and double stroke stickings. All right, and this is sort of the true soloing language. So you hear something in your head, the way to make it come out is to have lots of different sticking options in your vocabulary. So let's try this a little bit faster. Let's say 160. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are really tremendous for your coordination. And remember, you can play some of those accents on the snare drum. Each time you do it, it should be a little bit different. Improvise. It's a challenge to get through all these. Now, the next video we'll do, I'll show you some foot ostinatos to work on with these. It's tremendous for developing coordination. So I'll just play a little for you, and then we'll call it a day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.